Like to call to order the meeting of the Parks and Public Works Committee. So roll call.
Jerry.
Here.
Hoffman.
Here.
Kimball.
Here.
Roach is not here. Stanton.
Here.
Teal.
Here. I guess you're assumed. Okay, so the next thing would be the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, additions to the agenda?
No, I'm good.
Do we need a roll call on that?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, how about approval of the minutes?
You do have to do a motion and a second. It's just not roll call, it's a voice.
Oh, thank you.
You're-
Okay, so I guess we need
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
all right, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? Okay. Now, approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from April 22nd, 2025.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, all right, we are on to public comment on agenda items only. Well, it's standing room only here in the in the facility, but I don't see anybody online either, is there?
No, not.
What is that comment that says, and the winner is?
I don't see it.
It's on the bottom right. Oh, all right, never mind.
Whatever.
I don't know
Oh,
why it
I
says
see
it.
that, yeah.
Okay, I
Oh,
think we are. the
That's
winners.
nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just curious, that's all.
Okay, so let's move on to our discussion items. So the first thing would be the heading of council priorities, and under that is restore Mount Baldhead vegetation. So I can talk a little bit, but Scott, you can add embellish. So, we talked last meeting about how the vegetation in one area, had been decimated by a well-intentioned move to eliminate the Asian bittersweet. And that's been several years ago, and it still seems like it's a bare spot. So there was a concern by council that we have erosion and we need to address that. So we decided that would be an active project and we would consult with experts. Since that meeting, Scott reached out to Allegan Conservation District, and you had a meeting with them, and I'll let you tell. what happened.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, it was a great meeting. They're such a helpful resource. Met with a few different people from that team, and the basically, the idea is to get some professional eyes on this and see. They explained that they could do an assessment of the dune, and it's a living dune, and so shifting and whatnot is a natural process. But you can't help but notice that big, relatively bare spot going down it, and it seems to go straight up towards the building and the tower. That's raised a lot of concerns from residents and community members. So we just wanted to get some eyes on it and do an assessment of what are we looking at here? That as Nancy alluded to, it had been quite a few years since that damage occurred. That herbicide was sprayed. So we took a look at it from Lucy Street, and then I think we got up close and personal to it too, and ended up hiking up part of the way. And so the Allegan Conservation District is going to be doing an assessment, relatively inexpensive to have them do. I think once they've done an assessment, they can come in and present about what their findings are. So some of the basic questions that we had are like, okay, yes, there's some bare dune. Is there actually active erosion? Or is this just kind of some unsightly bare dune? And so that's one of the first things, they could kind of tell from just our initial walkthrough that it didn't seem that there were any signs of active erosion, which is fantastic news. But then it's kind of like, well, are there some things that we can do to kind of alleviate the concerns and enhance it a little bit more to make sure that, it'll stabilize more. And so they'll be able to compile all that information, put some recommendations together of what we could do, outline how severe of a problem we have, and offer, specific planting varieties or whatever we can do to get some root systems established up in that dune. So They seem to think that, we would have some sort of a report, you know, within a month or two.
Good.
That's great, great.
And then will they come back and present to council at like a workshop or
I
something?
think probably the PPW committee, and then
Okay.
if desired, I'm sure they'd be willing to come into a council meeting too.
That sounds
So,
great. Yeah, thanks,
I
Scott.
I was reading on what you had sent me that it actually is like, we're looking at a larger areas, a number of different areas too that are involved with like replanting things and all that. Is that something that we can start looking for? Because you said it might, cost may be prohibitive at the end of the day.
You mean on the invasive species?
The invasive species and replanting species, because that was all in the package you had sent me. They seem
Right,
like
that
they're all-
actually is our very next topic.
Oh,
So I
okay. Then I'll shut up.
No, I think we're just ready to roll into it.
And then Scott, as far as the cost on the assessment, do we have to approve that or
I don't,
anything?
no, this was a council priority. The figures that we were talking about are well within my purchasing power.
Perfect.
So I mean, we're talking just a few $100
Okay,
probably.
that sounds great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
Mhm.
Okay, so hopefully we'll have something by next meeting. Should we prompt them that we'd like that?
Yeah, they have-
Was that
yeah.
Jason that you met with?
Brian
Bri-
Tolsma, and there were two other gentlemen.
Okay.
That I had met for the first time.
Okay.
So,
All right, so next is invasive species. Thanks, Brian. So you, Scott also talked to Allegan County Conservation. I keep saying it Allegan County Conservation,
Yeah.
but when you look at their title, it's Allegan Conservation
I do the same
District.
thing.
And, but I presume they only cover Allegan County?
Yeah.
Anyway, and they basically informed you that they have a new person coming on staff who has expertise in invasive species. I don't know the background for sure, but anyway, that person was going to be starting, I think, almost by now.
In June.
Yeah. And so they were suggesting that they could actually come out and take a look. So to your point, Brian, the invasive species project is not limited to Mount Balda.
Right.
It is basically all areas of public property within the city of Saugatuck. And so that would include all of our parks. Now, we don't expect that our manicured parks, like Wicks Park, I don't think there's a lot of invasive species, or probably Coughlin either. But the Peterson Preserve, the Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area, and then also the airport, Saugatuck Wilds.
Yeah.
And also we are including the roadsides. So that covers a lot of area.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I think as a next step, we will have this new hire come on and they're I think they're gonna make a proposal, for what they could do for us with that, because that's a pretty big project, I would think.
Yeah, it's
I would think
huge.
that's more than a couple of $100, but you don't know anything more than that on
Yeah,
that
no,
one.
we didn't go over costs. We just basically, which will be a huge component of it, but basically, yeah, they have funding and they've filled this new position. This person starts in June, and one of the very first items that they're going to work on is the city of Saugatuck. So there really isn't a whole lot of information. We can really only have everything to gain from gaining this kind of expertise and taking a look at all the invasives, not just, the ones that people are most familiar with or more vocal about, but taking a look at all of our invasives, doing an analysis of, what's involved in treating these, especially in terms of cost. And then, what would be the best roadmap for us to systematically apply some annual dollars to, for treatments so that we can catch up with it.
And I, basically after Scott updated me on all these things, I just went ahead and I thought, well, we know something about our invasive species because we had the ODC look at the Saugatuck Wilds. And then we also have had West Michigan Land Conservancy look at Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area. So I pulled out those documents
Yeah.
and just kind of went through them. And I started a little spreadsheet just because I'm like a
I
spreadsheet.
love a
kind of
good
person.
spreadsheet. Fantastic.
Kind of a spreadsheet kind of person.
So I kind of listed all the ones that had been identified and then like, where were they? And then I figured once we get, we can share that with, this representative and I think it's a her. Because just as an aside, I'm on the email list for Allegan Conservation District, and they were asking for volunteers, and this kind of leads into the Pocket Prairies, to come and help with their pollinator garden. So I volunteered, and anyway, I was able to chat with a couple of the people from Allegan Conservation District, and they mentioned that she would be starting in a couple of weeks, so
Okay.
evidently a woman, but I don't know much more than that, but we did talk about that. So I don't think the spreadsheet was actually put in part of the packet, but if anybody,
Yeah,
I
you
think I sent it to you.
You sent it out.
I didn't send it. I sent it to some people. I sent it to you too because you were particularly interested.
Yeah.
If anyone else wants the spreadsheet, I'm happy to share it.
No, it's good that it exists. That's great.
So yeah, Brian.
And I was thinking, just talking about, one of the last things is like, we're gonna be, the cost may be significant on some of the replanting and taking out. And is that something just to put in the back of our head for community involvement and private people start ponying up to own a part of a garden in the city?
I think,
And, to kind of cut into the cost that would be to the city or to us.
right. And I don't know if we have a budget for anything like that, or if it would have to be approved by council.
Probably, but I mean, just
yeah, I
in the back
mean-
of our head, it might be something that we could, people could sponsor an area.
Yeah, we have allocated funding for invasives already. I think we've actively treated hemlock woolly adelgid as well as milfoil in the waterway system, and that's kind of an annual reoccurring expense.
Right.
But I think this will just take it a step further, and we'll kind of just put one foot for the other and try to get some definitions of what the problems are currently before we can kind of start tackling some of the other financial pieces and whatnot.
Okay.
I think those, this person is going to focus on our plant species. They're really not looking for invasive insects or
In my mind, I would like them to at least start with plantings.
that. I mean,
That's what we're
that's
seeing.
just the way I have it in my head. So that's why I'm just
Yeah,
wanting to see, because I know.
but like hemlock woolly adelgid, that's obviously an insect. Or
Right, if they happen to
fungus.
see some,
Yes.
we would want to know about it.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on invasive species? It seems like until we get this report, we're just gonna sit tight.
Mhm.
Okay, wayfinding and signage. And, excuse me, and Kelly had volunteered to take that one. She did reach out to West Michigan Land Conservancy because her thought was where we could start, kind of the low-hanging fruit was with that particular area. And because there was a relationship with them, she thought we may want to continue with them, or there might be a requirement that we continue with them. But that is not the case. So she learned that they said, what they did to help acquire the property, was what they were originally engaged for. And so there's no requirement that we continue to work with them. It sounded like they're sort of busy.
Okay.
So they're not going to be offended, I think, if we don't. And so anyway, as far as the signage, we thought that, since ODC was doing all the signage for Saugatuck Wilds, we would want some consistency and, maybe we could work with them.
I agree with that.
And so that was all good. And then Scott, you talked to Ryan and go ahead and.
Sure,
Here.
Yeah, upon first glance, we thought that, ODC was tackling some of our signage out at the Saugatuck Wilds Nature Preserve. And so it kind of made sense to continue that for the sake of consistency. But council actually, at their strategic planning, actually zoomed back a little bit further. And there's a plan for the city manager and city council to kind of take a look at almost like a rebranding, really take a look at everything that we have currently for the city. So like on the side of our DPW trucks, we have the city logo at the top of these agendas. Douglas, I think, redid their logo in recent years, and it looks fantastic. So I think there's kind of a bigger plan for taking a look at rebranding, and along with it, some wayfinding and signage throughout the city. So
Yeah.
that's
and-
going to be a massive job,
Yeah.
and it's going to be very involved for city staff and council. And so really until that happens, we're probably a little bit premature on developing some signage for our trail systems within the city, with a caveat that Saugatuck Wilds Nature Preserve is maybe treated slightly different only because we had some funding available for it and it's outside of the city limit.
Yeah. So with the wayfinding and signage, a lot of it will be, you know, downtown business district, that sort of thing. But if that can match the Saugatuck Harbor Natural area signage, that would be fantastic. But we'll get to that point once we are in the throes of that. So that's going to
Good
be a big project. So
And, you know, we want, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we could do some generic stuff in the Maytown if we wanted, pinpoint a few spots. You know, at the beginning of a trail, or at the end of a trail, or mid-trail, they don't have to be anything extravagant, you know? Like signage, go this way, go that way.
And that's a good point, because my concern was we really wanted with the Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area to follow up on West Michigan Land Conservancy's recommendations that we mark the trails so that people stop going where they shouldn't, you know, and we direct them to where they should go. And so
Yeah.
that would mean another whole year of not being, you know, making any progress on the trails.
I'm willing to talk to Ryan about that if that's something we need to do sooner than, you
Yeah,
know,
just-
our
I
full
think what
on.
Keith's suggestion was, you know, some temporary things.
Because they've already identified areas, the Land Conservancy has already identified areas where signage was needed and.
Yes.
Yeah, directional signage to keep off the dunes and make sure, you know, some of the pathways that have been created kind of like go away. And
Right.
the ones that they really want people to use are more evident.
That would be great. Yeah.
There are some out there already.
Right, but evidently they're not doing the job from what they said. You know, people are going where they shouldn't. And, you know, so
We can see about doing
like
something
certain, you know, I
sooner on
guess,
that.
fragile areas and that kind of thing where they shouldn't be walking, people are just making their own way because we don't have clear, you know, clear direction for go here, don't go there.
Sounds good.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, so moving on to our PPW projects, invasive species website.
Jamie's got that started, but it's not up. So
Okay.
she's, right now, she's been busy with, they just got done with the election. She's getting ready for Memorial Day. Memorial Day's here and summer's kicking, and she says it's on her list of things to do. But I gave her the first one.
You gave her the
I
content?
gave her the first invasive species, garlic mustard.
Okay,
And so she's got the start, she's got a picture, she's got the name, and she's got remedy.
well, that's great.
So at least there's a landing page that Jamie is getting started, and then we can just add to it as we have more things to
Absolutely.
give to
And
her.
I've got the list of what that you just sent, so we have a list to start with.
Oh, okay.
And I can add gazillions to that.
Yeah. And if you go on
We
that,
both have like lists going, because I've been adding things as I go.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, and I have it also an expanded list.
I mean,
At the last meeting, Jamie said, you know, she's in charge of the city website and basically just send her information, pictures, anything that you would need, and then she'll just update it as we want to update it. But Jamie is your go-to.
And I made it small, you know, I made it easy so that there's basically a heading with the name, a picture, and just, you know, 2 or 3 ways to simply get rid of it. I mean, whether it's herbicide, whether it's pan picking, and how to throw it away.
I appreciate that. I always feel like I need to know what to do with it. Like, what do I do with it? I don't want it to go to the landfill. I don't want it to, you know, go to.
Just somewhere else.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Basically, well, with garlic mustard, you bag it up.
Yeah.
And you throw it away, so when it does go into the landfill, it just hangs out by himself.
Okay. Okay.
but I wonder sometimes if it's not flowering or, you know, it doesn't look like it's gone to seed, is it okay to throw it in the compost pile? Or is it never
No,
okay?
Once it's gone to seed, it's gone
Right,
to seed.
Right, but if it doesn't, I mean, if it clearly is just starting to bloom or something like
It'll
that,
seed no matter what.
even in my
even-
compost pile,
Yeah.
you think?
Boo.
Okay, just, yeah, because I hate throwing stuff in the landfill.
I
you
know, I know.
I'll throw it in the compost pile if I don't.
But it magically disappears when you do that.
Well, that's true. Okay, anything else on invasive species website? No, okay, pocket prairies, I think that's me. So I don't have a big update, a couple of things I wanted to mention. First of all, I did just mention that I went to the Allegan County, or the city of Allegan's pollinator garden. And my husband said, you will be the person who traveled the furthest to work in a pollinator garden and pull weeds. But as it turned out, there was one other person who is on the board for the Allegan Conservation District who was about equally as far. There was not a big turnout, but we worked for about a little over 3 hours. And they have kind of a small corner, I don't know if you say it's a whole lot, but anyway, and they have basically just areas that are, like pollinator garden beds and then a little bit of, grassy areas, in between. And but it was good to see what they had, but I don't think we have as much space, or I don't think I would even want to take on that big of a space, initially. And it needed a lot of work and we got a lot done, but there's always more to do. The other thing that I was going to mention was I did, I started the one at Peterson Preserve. So I had checked on it occasionally and I could see that some of the plants, so I planted in the fall and you always kind of cross your fingers if that stuff is going to even come up. Well, most of it has come up. The Joe Pye weed has not come up and it's always late to come up, but I think it should be up by now. So I'm thinking that one fizzled, but the rest of them were up. But, we have those wonderful critters and
Yeah.
so several of the plants have been, someone's lunch. I don't think anything was eaten to the point where it won't recover, but if it continues to be eaten, I don't know if it will recover. The other thing was there were a lot of weeds in that it was a bed that was pre-constructed, but hadn't really had anything planted in it. So it was just a weed patch. And so the staff had pulled the weeds initially, but I guess over the winter, it was full of that nut sedge. And I mean, there must be 150,000 little bitty nut sedges. So I pulled weeds for about 2.5 hours yesterday, just so I could clear the weeds around the plantings. And then I did also, I went to a native plant sale. You've heard me mention before, Hidden Savannah, which is all the way in Kalamazoo. It's like an hour's drive, but I had picked some things up there. So I went ahead and planted those. Cross your fingers, the deer don't eat them. And I had some things out of my own garden, that were just volunteers that I relocated to the garden. So it's starting to fill in. The next step basically will be to get some mulch. And so my thought is, how if you spread newspaper on top of stuff and then pile the mulch on, you
Yeah.
can smother it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping I can do that. So if I can get mulch delivered, which I can contact Chad and say I'm ready. And, but then spread the newspaper and I save commercial records just for this
Okay.
purpose.
Great-
Because there's not that
great
many
use.
newspapers out there anymore.
Cardboard is good for that too. We use cardboard.
Cardboard is even better. I didn't know if
Yeah.
I'd have enough
Oh,
cardboard.
I have a
that
lot of
area.
cardboard if you need it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then my daughter-in-law's been helping me with this. So I think once we get the mulch delivered, and I did go out there last night then with blood meal, which is
Yeah.
kind of a deterrent, for the deer.
Oh, I've used that before.
Yeah, so I sprinkled that. So
Yeah.
Where is this? Down by the
preserve?
Peterson Preserve?
Peterson
Ed?
Preserve, you know where the benches are?
Yes.
So if you're facing the preserve to the left, there's a marked off bed.
Oh, okay, okay.
So there's
I'll
like
go
service
down
berries, that it's not
You-
there.
You
And-
can't miss it. You just go down there and you can't miss it.
And at some point, we need a little sign.
Yeah.
But I was gonna try to figure one out and then, of course, we'll need a real sign when we get signage.
Right,
right?
right. Yeah. But it's nice that
Yeah.
people know what's happening there. Yes.
So then, and I did walk around town a little bit to try to identify a good spot for, for one that would be a little more visible. And I just need to, I think get with you, Scott, to figure out what that could.
Can I kind of tee that up just for a second?
Yeah,
All right.
go
Yeah,
for it.
the Saugatuck Douglas Garden Club reached out and wanted to express an interest in potentially purchasing the city purchased some flowers and plantings for the flower beds at Peterson Preserve. And so, Nancy and I discussed it a little bit and, of course, we already have this kind of vision for some pollinator gardens in that area. And so I think that's what Nancy's kind of referring to, maybe taking a look at some other areas of the city, if the garden club is willing to chip in, and they do a beautiful job in Douglas. I'm always so jealous of Douglas and all the attention that they get with their streetscaping, and flower planters. So, we're just trying to tap into that a little bit more and see if we can get, some assistance from the garden club.
That'd be great.
So if you have any ideas or spot some areas that are, manageable in size,
Sure.
feel free to send those, my way.
Yeah, they don't need to be real big. So,
Right.
okay. Moving on to the playground spinner.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with Jeremy Bosman, I think his name is, from Sinclair. Kelly gave me his contact information. So I just basically asked him some questions like what is the amount of space we're gonna need? What's the most viable kind of space that we're gonna need to use the spinner? What kind of considerations should we take when choosing a spot? And I mentioned specifically that we had floated the idea of Oval Beach as one of the possibilities. And then that I was wondering also about the ease and cost of moving it down the road, if that was something we were thinking about, considering we had a dedicated space, we're not using that space, we're trying to come up with, the best viable option. So he said that the area that we are gonna need is gonna have to be 23 by 23 feet. So larger area than I had anticipated, although I have not seen the equipment myself, so I'm not sure how big it is, but he also said that we are gonna require that wood fiber safety surfacing like we have at the playground. So that's a consideration. He said that ideally we're gonna wanna avoid sand. Sand can shorten the lifespan of the bearings of the equipment. So, Oval Beach is probably not a good option for that. He said the equipment can pretty much go anywhere as long as the location is large enough, but as far as considerations, we would want to avoid lower trees and we would want to make sure that,
When you say avoid lower trees, what do you mean? Like just,
he meant like heavily wooded areas that have kind of low trees because they have height requirements for the
Okay.
equipment. So, and I don't think any of the places that we're really looking at, we don't have to worry about that. But one of the things he did say is in terms of choosing a space, relocating it is going to be really difficult because there is the main pole is buried and is set in concrete, so it would be a very large undertaking, so probably expensive. He didn't have a quote in terms of how much that would be to relocate it if we needed to, but we're gonna wanna pick something more probably permanent.
I'm not gonna transplant. it.
great.
Yeah. Or, at least
Yes.
something that we know we're gonna be able to leave it there for quite a while.
Right.
I did kind of walk around town to the different parks with my measuring tape and just tried to see, what would be a viable location, where does it make sense? Obviously Oval Beach is not gonna be an option. I went to Mount Baldhead Park. That is also very sandy, and also dark. There are it is heavily treed, so, and I just feel like there aren't a lot of kids that go there. I think that's more of an adult space, because you don't see a lot of kids running around using the stairs. I thought while walking around kind of our inner town parks that, either if we look at Wicks Park, the area to the right of the bathrooms seems like a good choice. I know there may be concerns regarding the amount of space it takes up there because we use that space for a lot of different things. But I liked that area because we've got the ferry right there. People waiting for the ferry, that would be a good option for, kids running around in that park to have a dedicated thing to do. Also avoiding the tree like climbing of the tree that is a default that a lot of kids go to, when they're, so I thought that would be kind of a good, option. Now, Coglin Park also, there's so much space there, so I think that would be a really nice option. The only thing I thought about with that was, I mean, we use that space for things like the Venetian Festival. That is, something we do every year. Doesn't seem like that equipment would fit well with that kind of, agenda that we typically have for that space. So if we're gonna put it there, we have to keep that in mind. Like maybe there's something closer to the shopper docks or, somewhere down there at Coglin that would make sense, that wouldn't get in the way of the large event space. And then Cook's Park, honestly, I couldn't find my map of the area that we have there, so I wasn't sure exactly how much of that space was ours, so I didn't really consider that a great option. It could be, but I would need to figure out exactly what slice of that space we have, and I don't see a lot of kids hanging out there either. Like, it just seems like either Coglin or Wix would be the most logical choice.
What about the space in front of the Christian Science?
I thought of that as a fourth option too.
Oh, I didn't even think about that
Art
one.
Cultural Park, the
Yeah.
Village Square, that southwest quadrant.
Just
That way,
as a possibility, just to add one
Yeah.
more
If it's,
spot.
right across the street from the other playground.
Public washrooms, if kids spin too much, they can,
Um,
I didn't even know we owned, like, that was a park, so that's our space?
Yes.
Okay,
I would have thought it was Christian Science.
Ford Corner.
yeah. I think that would be
That would be
probably a
great.
great location because we're not getting in the way.
I think at least I got a clear directive that that playground piece was not to go back in Village Square. So, but I'm
That
also,
quadrant, but maybe another quadrant, it would be okay. I don't know. I'm asking.
Village Square was the term.
Okay.
That
Okay.
I'm, one more consideration, just throwing it
Let's
out there.
throw one more out. Like it.
We did a really nice, we have a ribbon cutting ceremony coming up for the Saugatuck Wilds Nature Preserve. I was able to get eyes on parking lot improvements out there and the work that the Outdoor Discovery Center has been up to. And if you join us for that ribbon cutting ceremony
Friday.
Yeah.
on Thursday,
Thursday.
29.
keep that playground spinner in mind for out there. I mean,
I
for
was wondering about
those,
that
Not
too.
a fan.
if you've hiked, well, that's fine. But if you've gone out to like the Outdoor Discovery Center on 56th Street, and kind of seen how it's just this incorporation of trails and like stone and wood and also some playground pieces, like they have zip lines out there and whatnot. It's kind of that
That's a great
same
idea.
theme for the Saugatuck Wilds.
I like
Nature
zip
Preserve,
lines.
So
Zip lines are fun.
Yeah.
That would be a great, like,
food for thought.
yeah, something to even consider expanding the use of that.
So,
Yeah.
one thing that we've done in the past when we've had these ideas, one I can think of is when we were supposed to have the, pavilion at Wicks Park. We ended up not doing it, but what they did is create the amount of space and put it, our engineering firm, put it in different areas so people could kind of visualize it with, kind of a map where you're looking up above and you could see its location.
Mhm.
And put that exact footprint in like, say, 5 different places throughout the city so we can have a better visual of it. I'm a visual person, so I like to see like, take a look at the park and this is
How
what it would
invasive.
look like in this spot. Take a look at this park and what it would look like in this spot. Maybe our engineers could do that for us or somebody could do that for us.
That seems like a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
it makes us, start to,
Well, maybe if
Like-
I think about the pollinator garden, we could have them do that part too.
right.
There you go.
Because it's hard to visualize.
It is.
But that
Yeah.
would be, you know, it's a big piece of equipment, you know, what would it look like in this space? What would it look like in that space? And I think that helps us, you know, to kind of feel for it.
Yeah, Sinclair Recreation could probably do that too.
Ooh, let's
They
have them
they have
do
all
it.
the renderings and whatnot of all those playground pieces too, so it's
But-
probably gonna be significantly less expensive than having our engineering firm
Yeah,
do it. But,
thank you for that.
But yeah,
Scott.
Jeremy's fantastic, as you know, you've worked with him. so.
Okay.
Do you want Judy
but
to follow up or are you going to follow up, Scott?
It was stated somewhere about
I'll follow up.
not putting that in the village square,
Yeah,
Yes.
probably.
part of the.
Well, part of it is, you know, the reason why we didn't do it in the original spot is because it would have wrecked some of the tree roots. And there are a lot of, you know, pretty significant trees in that other quadrant as well. So that might have been challenging anyway, but yeah.
Plus, there's so much going on in Village Square that I think it's nice to have that one part that's kind of calm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and we're gonna have more improvements, you know, in the near future too, with the courts being redone. so.
Right.
So we're thinking maybe, you know, maybe have Sinclair see if they could place some sort of imagery at like Wicks Park, Coughlin, Cook, I'll probably skip over the Bert Tillstrom Park and then out at the Saugatuck Wild Nature
Yeah.
Preserve and kind of take a look at those.
And maybe even two different spots at Coughlin, whether it's down below the hill, at
Right,
the top of the hill.
Because there's so much.
You
room
know,
there.
the area near the sculpture seems like a good spot, but that's, you know,
Yeah.
my thoughts. Because, you know, when they put the bathrooms in for Venetian Festival, you could still, you know, keep that separated.
Yeah,
if it
that's
was,
to the side.
yeah,
It's not right in the middle of the big
Right.
space.
so it might be an opportunity there too.
Also an area at Cooks Park or Coughlin Park that was supposed to be a drainage area for the rain garden that came off the SCA. It's totally not used anymore. So it could almost be filled in.
It is part of a storm scepter that
Mm.
Oh, it is.
that feeds into that. Yeah, the idea being that storm water would run through that natural vegetation before being discharged into the river.
Yeah, I just went back at it, trying to figure out where to put the pocket prairie.
Okay. That sounds great.
Yeah, my preference, I love Wicks Park. I would hate to see a playground spinner go there. That's where I go to sit and it's so nice.
Yeah.
So,
we
It's,
sell it?
it's got a lot of things there already. There's a lot
yeah,
of,
yeah, but Coughlin Park, I think is a good idea
yeah.
because there's kind of nothing there. And when you have a festival, it'd be great to
I
send
could
your
tell
kids over,
this.
you know, to
Yeah.
play on this equipment.
What's that? It's tiny, you guys.
Oh, look at that.
Can you get smaller type on that?
So, and I apologize, whenever you're ready to move on to the
I
next
think-
one.
I guess there's no more discussion on.
Anything that,
playground spinner? Okay, all right. Streetscaping.
yeah, and I apologize for the small type. I basically took Nancy's original one and like just modified it for this. So I should have gone up a size or two. Does everybody have glasses in? Can you see it okay?
Yes.
Otherwise I could send it out. I just worked on, you know, the streetscaping project charter. And the idea is, I've looked around at downtown Allegan, downtown Hastings, obviously Holland, where there's been an opportunity to really redo the streetscaping. Now, this is something that I see down the road after we are looking at lead service line replacement and road repairs to Butler Street. It seems like it would coincide with that. So whenever we have to dig up Butler Street because we're replacing lead service lines, it seems like the ideal opportunity to go ahead and redo our streetscaping. You know, as far as objectives, I want to be able to go out and provide pictures for you guys. So, you know, I can include that in an upcoming meeting that we would have, just different ideas that I've seen in other communities that I think would be ideas to consider. We want to think about things like benches, tree surrounds, shade, any planters, and anything that can improve safety as far as trip hazards and that sort of thing, and create some sort of a uniform look. Also ideas for, these are just objectives that I'm just considering. Ideas for shoulder season opportunities like a fire pit or warming areas. A lot of,
That's
you
a
know,
good one.
communities have that. It just kind of creates something for in the fall or the winter that would look nice.
Holland has a fire pit.
Yeah, Helen has one.
Yeah.
And I believe Allegan has one now too, and Hastings.
They did during COVID at least. I'm not sure if those were permanent or if they
Yeah.
were temporaries. but-
And there's lots of communities that, you know, have them somewhere that makes sense. Also, you could possibly incorporate outdoor eating spaces, so fewer parking spots are taken up. The way they did it in Allegan, they created kind of like bump outs where they had tables and chairs. So then maybe you wouldn't have to use parking spaces any longer. Those are ideas. Um, Also, something to consider is, city council is looking at eventually having a parking committee started to create more parking spaces in our area and what that looks like. That can also be incorporated with our streetscaping as far as creating more parking spaces. Maybe paid parking is going to be something that is being considered. So these are all things that would be considered in our streetscaping project. So there's a lot to this.
A lot.
Street lighting consideration. When we talk about dark sky, we want to make sure if we are replacing any street lights downtown, what do those look like? When I was in Allegan, they have a community-wide outdoor speakers. So then it's a uniform sound that's going on instead of every store having their different sound
Oh.
and speakers. It was really nice because it was generic, but like at Christmas time, you could have Christmas music going and, just create, that's something that could be considered. And then if any bike racks need to be added or incorporated into our streetscaping, that could be talked about as well. This is something that down the line, I'm sure we could have some committee members form a group to research some of this. As far as external resources, obviously our engineering firm, any landscape, hardscape designers, community volunteers that obviously we could get those on our committee if we had a committee that worked on this. And then Saugatuck staff, obviously Scott Herbert, but we are also hopefully approving tonight a project manager position. And that could be something that future project manager could help us with as well.
That's great.
So let's see. As far as background, obviously I'm thinking of the downtown business district, but also, the Water Street area. A lot of those sidewalks are extremely narrow on Water Street, and we could use a lot of help throughout that area. So Water Street might even be a bigger project than Butler Street, but maybe something to consider there. And of course, the timing of such is something we need to consider because, we don't want to disrupt the middle of our tourism season and, it be a giant mess, but it is going to be a big project and it'll take time. Let's see, it's on the city's priority list as far as streetscaping, but also the parking. So these are all things that can be incorporated, again, lead service line replacement and all of that. As far as approach, I can continue to do research. If we end up wanting to form a committee, that's something that the city council would probably recommend at some point, once we're to that point. Let's see. And I pretty much the approach and the objectives are about the same thing, but we'll have to have historic district approval. We would love to hold, I would love to hold a public open house with engagement opportunities with business owners and community members. As far as doing that down the line. I know this is a project that is probably a little bit further out. But yeah, I think all of this would be really great because there's so much that we can do, but also balancing the eclecticness and art of our community with having a uniform design that is better for safety and trip hazards and our tree roots and all of that. So keeping those two things in mind, not wanting to make it too generic, but also wanting to do the best thing we can for safety and for, again, like tree roots and that sort of thing. So that's all that I have for that.
Wow, Lauren, that's impressive.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
Have it
and
done by next week?
Yeah, we should be able to do that. Yeah.
that is so much more than I was expecting, but it's
There's a
great.
lot.
Yeah.
There's
But
a
it
lot.
also intersects with a lot of the things that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And, it branches out the pollinator gardens.
Yeah,
is,
we could-
the
Dark skies.
dark skies,
Right.
all that. I mean, it all kind of
Right.
That's
is
great.
one big thing.
Yep. And, if a committee is ever formed to do this, obviously we'd get input on the dark sky, we'd get input on the pollinators, we'd get, and it would be really great. And then parking. Parking is going to be a fun one.
I was just on the northeast side of the state, looking for birds and, every small town was streetscape.
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, It's almost like they were copies of the previous one. These are tiny little towns too.
I was in Muskegon the other day and they had a lot of, newer streetscaping in their area. And you can see there's some do's and don'ts that we need to look at because they didn't do a deep enough brick. And so it got sheared off in some areas. So consider that. But really seeing what has worked in some communities and what hasn't, and like learn from that a little bit.
What
So-
I noticed was buried utilities.
Yeah.
No electric
Oh,
line.
that would be
Oh, yeah.
great.
That
was the
would be
number
so
one
good.
thing in every town.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if you're gonna do it, why not bury the utilities? That would be fantastic. Cause the way they go through the trees is always
It's just,
challenging and it's kind of ugly.
it's ugly. What about, warming sidewalks?
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah.
That's,
If we had the infrastructure that Holland has, it would be fantastic, but we just don't,
But
we don't have
you could
that.
actually do it with a train engine that's coal.
Okay,
And you could set up your own electrical heating system. for
is that right?
But that's irrelevant.
Okay.
Ever since I've,
Probably-
if I may just
Yeah,
add,
go ahead.
ever since I've worked for the city, with the staff, we kind of call Butler Street like the sleeping dragon. Just because there are hard infrastructure needs underneath the road surface. We've had some sanitary sewer issues, our storm sewers, are in need of some help, our catch basin structures, lead service lines. There's a lot going on with Butler Street. Nobody wants to tackle this project because this will be a project that will be disruptive to the summer season. This is not something that you can fit in before Memorial Day or after
Oh.
Labor Day. This is like, it's gonna be torn up for a season. But, it sounds like, this stuff is far away. Time flies fast, and we do have at least we have some on our capital improvements plan. We're starting to see, some of this project take shape, survey, preliminary, design, and inventory, as early as fiscal year 2028, 2029. So that's, that is not that far away, given how big of a project this really is. So,
Yeah, it'll take a long time just to plan it.
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, Maple Street, it's taken us a couple of years. It's one of our longest stretches of road, but there's far less complexities to it.
Mhm.
Where downtown, this has the potential to really change the appearance of our downtown as we know
No
it.
one's
So,
gonna-
and in a good way, I think
No
improve.
one's gonna be happy at all.
No one's gonna be happy. And
I'll be happy.
And the thing is like, as far as phasing projects, it always feels easier if you do it in phases, even though I know construction costs, they want to just do it all,
Mhm.
but my wish would be if we could do it in sections of Butler Street and not the whole thing. So at least people can walk around and get to certain businesses and, yeah,
yeah, so it wouldn't disrupt all of downtown all at
exactly,
once. Yeah.
exactly.
So on this lead service line, if that's one of the driving forces, do we have a timeline on that? then?
Yeah.
Lead and copper rules imposed by us by the state are, I think don't quote me, it was like 2041 that we had to get them replaced, but I think they've bumped it back to like 2038 or something like that. It's around that time frame. So.
Okay,
We have to do a certain percentage per year to show that we're working towards full compliance.
okay.
So it's
So Butler Street will be the last street you do.
maybe, yeah,
If engineering and public works have anything to do with it, we're gonna keep it on the CIP.
I know.
And at least get started on this stuff because we see things, right? Like, we have something right now. Like if you look south of Culver Street right now, there's cones in the middle of the road. There's a potential sinkhole right there. And it's like all those disruptions, they affect people and the tourist season. So, from
Yeah.
a safety standpoint, just from a asset management standpoint, it's not all too early to start considering these things because that's a big component of engineering. They're so great at what they do. They come in, they can put some preliminary designs together. What slows the processes down are the getting the community involved in these things, like the open house workshops, like we've
Right.
done for Maple Street. The opinion-based elements, like what looks good or how many flower planters are we putting in? Those are the pieces that can bog a project down time-wise. So the more of that stuff we can kind of work ahead of and peg down, the smoother that project is gonna go.
Yeah. So, I would be happy to, get some pictures together of things that I've seen that look great, give examples, at least we can start there. And then, eventually when it's time to have an open house and talk about these things and the engineers are ready to show some concepts, that would be great.
Yeah, it would.
No, no, that's great, Lauren. Thank you.
Yeah.
Quick question, Lauren. The city's hiring a project manager?
Yeah.
A new
Well, I
position.
shouldn't say yes. We are voting on it tonight.
And
So
it's a new position, a new hiree, someone to just handle projects, right?
it's basically an administrative position that will work directly with DPW, but then also work on, project coordination.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so we'll see. It has to pass tonight. So,
Okay, dark sky research. That's Judy too.
Yeah, so I think we talked briefly about this at the last meeting, and I think initially the intent I had with kind of taking this on was to just kind of engage the community with Dark Skies International and how to promote what they're doing. And but I think especially Nancy and I have been communicating a little bit about this offline. And there's a lot of opportunity here. It's really not just about having a dark sky. It's about energy waste, which people, I think, don't really realize that they are overlighting their homes and that they are overlighting the communities in many ways. And it's not really about avoiding lighting, it's about responsible lighting. So I think that initially I thought maybe we could just kind of have a landing page like we were talking about with invasive species, where we could help to promote and educate the community with how to, have responsible lighting and the impact that that light pollution has ecologically. But while I was looking into this, I did come across the lighting ordinance that the township recently passed. And so that's included in the packet. Article 9 for lighting really basically just goes over the principles for responsible outdoor lighting. And it's something that was published by the Dark Sky International and the Illuminating Engineering Society. It's to conserve energy, protect the natural environment from the adverse effects of artificial lights, curtailing degradation of nighttime visual environment, ensuring that all the lighting is designed and installed to maintain adequate lighting levels on site, preventing spillage and glare, and really kind of lighting things in a way that makes sense, that provides security and ample lighting where it makes sense, but not overlighting. So it goes into some pretty good detail regarding what the general requirements would be in terms of, who it's applicable to. It would really apply to anybody in the city. What limitations would have to be considered. It's about really making sure that you're not directing your lighting to other people's property or providing distraction to drivers. It talks about the direction of lighting. So there's a strategy for how lighting can be directed downward and making sure that, forgot what it was called, it's in here somewhere. The fixture types that they suggest are, I think it's referred to as cutoff. Yeah, a full cutoff fixture. So basically it's, there are certain things that would be prohibited, like laser sources and searchlights, things like that, I don't really notice here. But it's, you know, those are the general requirements, and then it gets into the specific lighting fixture requirements, and I think, from what I learned in reading through what they published, this is for new builds and, kind of future projects, just kind of outlining what the requirements would be. Their focus is on the lighting color temperature. So basically, there's a not to exceed number of kelvins when you're implementing new lighting. The fixture type, like I mentioned, is considered what they call cutoff, and that just makes sure that the glare is directing the lights specifically down in a certain way. There's essentially like a lot of different fixtures. You can have up to a 360-degree lighting that is causing glare not only off to your neighbors, but into the sky. So if we adopted something like this, and I think that the intent would be, I know that Nancy, you had sent me a video of a meeting, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, where Chris Clark, a resident, had come in and suggested that we want to adopt, we would, if we wanted to get involved in responsible lighting, one of the best ways to do that would be to adopt a lighting ordinance. And I feel like, even at the time, everybody seemed open to the idea. And I've heard, you know, a little bit of rumblings about council being open to this now. So I feel like now is the time. We've got them, we've got Saugatuck Township already having kicked this off and done the work in terms of what the ordinance would need to entail. So I feel like if we just approach council and suggest that we adopt the same type of ordinance, we may get a pretty easy vote there. I watched the presentation that Chris Clark did in the video for council. It was probably, I don't know, 5-10 minutes long. I feel like we could take it off the shelf and just kind of promote the same considerations that he was describing. I'd like to be able to utilize what the township has already done and leverage that work. And then, because we have some crossover with some of the other things we're doing, they do have an outline of fixtures that would be considered non-compliant and compliant, including things like streetlights. So all of that is already outlined in their plan. They have parking lot and siting plans that would help so that we would be able to leverage the information for any upgrades that we're doing. And then lastly, they have a modification process. So it would be up to the planning commission to modify the requirements. So, you know, if there's unique land uses or considerations that have to be made where this couldn't be something that they were able to utilize, then it would go through the planning commission to get that kind of exception. But it really just seems logical. The township is doing this now. And it sounds like some other local municipalities are looking into this as well. So
One thing, excuse me, that Judy and I communicated about was possibly, I know a couple of people who are interested in this same topic, you know, that she could,
Yep.
she could basically have a little study group that was formed and could look at this and also probably look at what the township did. I'd want to know, like, okay, what was their source? You know, how did they come up with what they came up with? Did they have a consultant, or how, you know, how did they get to where they got? And also just think too, I also like the idea of education, you know, within our community. So I think a page on the website could be good, you know, so there's a lot we could do with it. The ordinance being
Yeah.
key, anyway, Lauren, I guess just from a council perspective, can
Yeah.
you weigh in?
I would say, the education on the website and having a landing page, if you can make something that is pretty easy with maybe even a link that is a pretty easy landing page on our website, that's the first thing we could get done. And then as far as, you know, having an ordinance and that sort of thing, that might be a little bit further down the road,
Yeah.
just because of staff time.
Right.
But it doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means that it might be just, you know, a little bit further down the road than the landing page on the website. That could be
Yeah.
the first thing we get done. And then as far as the ordinance goes, you know, I know there's definitely interest amongst city council members. It just might be a little bit further down the road to get that ordinance together for our city attorneys to, you know,
Yeah.
take a look at the townships and then draw up our own.
Yep, understood. And,
Yeah.
and I have a lot of links to, information that Dark Skies International already has. It's kind of off the shelf information that
Yeah.
they offer for people to be able to use that we could link to and have on that kind of landing page. There's a lot of visuals even in the article that the township has, but that Dark Skies International also has regarding fixture requirements and, you know, so even before we had an ordinance in place, we could definitely provide the education for people who are interested in, you know, what does responsible lighting look like? I mean, I know even my own lighting at my house, I thought was responsible until I started really looking into this, and it's not horrible, but you know, we could do a little better. So just, you know, I think it's an opportunity for us because we get a lot of traffic from Chicago and Detroit, and this is really a place people can come for stargazing. It's an attractive thing for tourists. You're supposed to, in what I learned when watching that video, that of Chris Clark at council, basically suggested that, we should be able to look up into the sky and see like 5,000 stars. But if you go to somewhere like Chicago, you might see a couple hundred, if that. So that just kind of speaks to the pollution that exists right now. And for tourists, they're looking to get away from that. They want to look up and see. 5,000
Residents are
stars.
looking to get away from it too. That's why they chose to live here.
Yep,
So,
yep. So that's about it for me.
Okay,
Thank you.
That's great.
yes.
okay, Cook Park review. So I just took it upon myself to try to figure out a little bit more about Cook Park. We talked about it at our last meeting and then there's confusion and I did learn some things. And to be honest, I'm still a little unclear. So I think there are a couple of different parcels, you know, that make up the park. But what I would consider to be like the main one is 40B, I think it was Water Street. And, or 40 Water Street is basically what they call that parcel. And it, you know, would be the part that's adjacent to the docks. And actually even, I guess includes the boardwalk. So the city owns that. And according to then I reached out to Jamie to say, okay, so we think there's some kind of lease going on with Singapore Yacht Club. And she came back and said, actually, no, the lease is with the Butler. And so I don't know if, I'm still unclear because I could see where the Butler would want to lease the part that, you know, like faces, you know, adjacent to their property. But it seemed like it was almost like the whole thing. And that's a 5-year lease. You
Hmm.
know, I should have looked it up right before it came, but it goes through 27. And I can't remember if it's just the end of 27 or the beginning of 27. But anyway, so that is a 5-year lease. And then they have a separate arrangement with Singapore Yacht Club. But I don't know if it's just for this, the, you know, the space, the dock and that kind of thing by them, or if it's actually that whole parcel. Because it said, what Jamie sent me said, see attached map, but there was no attached map. And anyway, then I said, well, what is the deal where they take care of the, you know, the maintenance? And Jamie came back and said, well, they get a discount on the slips because they take care of the maintenance. Does anybody?
Scott would know about is that the lawn cutting?
Yeah, because
guy?
you don't you said you don't have to take care of that.
No.
They do.
They do.
And that's probably, is that, if you have anything else to add, enlighten
Yeah,
us,
that's as
but-
far as I care, but no. Right, fine. No, but yeah, I haven't had a chance. I know that we talked about it the last meeting. I haven't had a chance to look at the lease agreement for it, but
I can send, did I send you what Jamie sent?
yeah, I have it all. I just,
Yeah. You have them.
Yep.
Okay, well, anyway, so it's, to
They
me, it's still a little
made-
clear as
made
mud.
the Docs too.
Yes, I don't know.
they do, yeah, because I've stopped down there before and there's the hut down there that they occupy. And so they've, you know, tightened down loose boards and whatnot. So they take care of the boardwalk too.
Yeah, I was only raising this issue initially to sort of figure out, were there things we could do in the park? So exactly what is our, our area that if we wanted to, enhance the park or do
Yeah.
something with it, what do we have? And so I'm still not clear if the Butler actually has a lease on that whole, where it almost looked like, where the willow tree was and all that, that is actually under lease to the Butler from what Jamie sent me, but the parcel map I could tell was a little bit off because then I looked up the one
Don't
that
know
was.
that, like, this is not very clear, because I
It's-
think the Butler owns it. So, and then the Singapore Yacht Club leases it from the Butler. The Butler, I believe the Butler owns it, right?
Well, there was a
dock.
lease. Oh, the dock.
Correct.
That could be.
Yes.
And I wasn't even as
And then we
concerned
have
about
an
the dock.
easement to be able to allow the city to keep that public so we can walk through there. But that's what I've always understood.
It said,
I think it's the other way around.
said
I
in the
think-
lease,
I think so.
it said in the lease that
Alright,
they
look
had
that
to
up.
allow public access.
Right, because that's part of the easement, but
That
yeah.
was the lease. It's leased to them. I can send you that.
Right. Well, that just because the Singapore Yacht Club leases it from the Butler is what I understand.
But that parcel 40 Water Street is the city property leased to the Butler.
Right. The park.
So, right,
of
so
it.
we still, but then like we're putting in that temporary art installation is,
Yeah. So it sounds like it's clear as mud.
that's what I. said.
So
we-
I think it
so
needs to be,
I'm
it'd be
still not
nice if
clear.
it was more clear so all of us can at least
Yeah.
know going forward where we can put things and
Yeah,
what, yeah.
right.
So if we can get that made more clear, that would be great.
So are you taking that one, Scott? Or you want
Yeah,
me to try it?
I can-
it'll be in the queue.
I could
Full
try some
disclosure,
more.
I'm
Yeah.
totally buried right now with
Yeah.
Memorial Day and the storm damage and everything. Like, this is just not on my radar at the moment, but
Yeah.
um,
It can be something that I can,
but I
Clarify.
Maybe Jamie
know.
can give us.
Yeah.
Just look at it a little more and
She's-
tell us.
Got a lot on her
She's,
plate.
she's busy too, right?
yeah.
All right, well, anyway, so that, I did work on it a little bit, that still not clear.
But I also want to make just a clarity point really though, is that, I don't, in my opinion, I don't think we're in a position to start, reviewing lease agreements that we have and kind of questioning the appropriateness of them. I think that that's a little more of the manager council level, but I think from a Cook Park perspective, we do, it would be helpful just to understand it, not that we can necessarily need to
Dictate.
change it.
Yeah.
right,
So just to
Right.
clarify.
Right.
that's good.
Okay, so next thing would be just an update on bike racks, because I think the CVB had contributed some funds, and so a couple of new bike racks were going in, and I just raised it with Scott to say, where are those going? Because I just wasn't clear.
Yeah, this is ready. It's pretty much a gimme putt at this point. So we've got the concrete slabs that are poured. We've got, the edging along the side of those concrete slabs done, a new tree planted in the middle of one of those bike rack slabs over by Scooters. We just need to assemble them and put them in place, which we're doing. But like I said, we've been.
Where are they though? Ones
They're
by
at Public
scooters?
Works. Oh, yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Where?
Over at Scooters, and then we have a slab over at Mount Baldhead Park right now
Okay,
for a bike rack, and then one over by the Chain Ferry's East Landing.
Okay.
And then a fourth one near the intersection of Mason and Butler Street on the south east corner.
okay, so those will be going in,
Within a week or two.
okay,
Yeah.
So near the Chain Ferry, near Mount Bald Head, Mason and Butler, and near Scooters.
Yes.
Those are the four.
Yep.
okay, thanks. Okay, that concludes the agenda, so I guess we're ready for public comments. And
One?
Lisa? Okay, I don't think we have anyone who's wanting to make a comment, so, and I don't believe we had any correspondence this time. I guess we're ready for committee member closing comments. Judy, you want to start?
Happy Memorial Day and good to be with everybody. Good discussion today.
Brian?
It's nice to be back, and I want to thank everyone for allowing me this space to take care of myself. I appreciate it. You have no idea. It really meant a lot to me that I didn't have to worry about this. And great meeting, and like I said, it's nice to be back.
Welcome.
Nice to have you back.
Keith?
Oh, you did the last closing.
Yeah, I
comment.
guess.
All right. Judy, thank you for the dark sky.
Yeah.
And that was
Absolutely.
very informative. I actually tell my neighbors to turn their lights off all
So do
the
I.
time. Because we have an owl in the neighborhood occasionally. Yeah, and you can hear, when you hear them, it's when all the lights are on. And I think that once you can figure out, down the line, the landing page for dark skies, it can be just like initially, instead of the public stuff, the private stuff that individuals can do. I think that's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Yes.
And that's about it for me, but happy Memorial Day, everybody.
I don't have anything to add, so just a great meeting.
And I don't either. I mean, I just feel like this is where I wanted us to get to. We've got some, we've got our plan and let's just execute on it. So I feel like we've made good progress on everything. So I'm very happy. So I think as far as next meeting, we will just continue on, so
Onward.
we all have some, some.
And hopefully
progress.
everyone can make it to the ribbon cutting on Thursday. 11 o'clock.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursday,
Scott,
11
you got
o'clock.
what to add?
Nope, that's everything.
Okay, wait, now I think I need a
Motion to adjourn.
adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay,
Who made the motion?
I did.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes, okay, motion carries
I
and
got a question.
we are adjourned.
Yeah, what's the last day basically for